Ever feel like just scrolling through the news these days could give you whiplash? One minute it's cat videos, the next you're like being told anyone who supports, that candidate is practically public enemy number one. Today's deep dive kind of wades into those murky water.
Yeah, and we're diving deep into some particularly strong currents with this article. It really doesn't hold back in exploring the increasingly aggressive rhetoric surrounding, well, mostly Donald Trump.
Yeah, for sure. And the author makes a pretty bold move right off the bat. They actually compare the way some people talk about Trump to like how political opponents are treated in, wait for it, dictatorships.
It's a jarring comparison. It is, for sure.
Yeah.
The article isn't suggesting America is suddenly, going full authoritarian regime or anything, but it does raise the question, right? Is there something to this parallel, or is it just overblown rhetoric itself?
So help us unpack this a little. What's the author really getting at with this whole dictatorship comparison?
They're arguing that this tactic of, demonizing your political opponent, making them out to be this monstrous threat, it isn't just about disagreeing with their policies, right? It's about justifying their removal from power, potentially by any means necessary, really.
So you create this image of someone so dangerous, so evil, that any action against them feels justified.
Right, exactly.
It's like painting a target on someone, even if it's done with words instead of bullets.
Yeah, and to support that point, the article dives into this concept of lawfare. Essentially, it's weaponizing legal battles to take down your political rivals.
Okay, lawfare, that's a new one for me. Break it down. What do they mean, really?
Think of it like this. Instead of fighting it out in the court of public opinion, you bury your opponent under an avalanche of lawsuits, investigations, anything you can throw at them. The goal isn't necessarily about like winning every single legal battle, It's more about draining their resources, smearing their reputation, making it impossible for them to actually govern effectively.
And the article is claiming that they're using this lawfare tactic against Trump.
Yeah, well, they point to the sheer volume of legal challenges that Trump has faced, right? Some dismissed, some still pending. And it argues that this constant legal barrage, regardless of its merit, really, it plays into this larger narrative of portraying him as just inherently corrupt and unfit for office.
So is the author saying this lawfare is working then, or is it kind of backfiring in a way?
See, that's where things get really interesting. The article actually argues that this legal strategy, at least as it's played out so far, has largely failed. The charges haven't really stuck, and in some cases, they've only energized Trump's base even more.
Okay, so if lawfare isn't working, what's the next move, according to the article?
That's where we get into some really unsettling territory. The article suggests that this perceived failure of lawfare is actually pushing the rhetoric to a much more dangerous level.
Yeah. And the article, it doesn't shy away from painting a pretty bleak picture, really, of what the author sees as the potential consequences of this escalating rhetoric. It talks about a dystopian future.
Dystopian future, that's pretty heavy stuff. I mean,
Yeah.
What exactly does the author envision happening? Like, what are they picturing?
They argue that this constant drumbeat of demonization, right? This portrayal of Trump as this existential threat to democracy, it could have very, very dangerous consequences.
Incitement. I mean, that's a loaded word. Is the author saying people are like openly calling for violence against Trump? It's more nuanced than that. The article highlights a particularly chilling quote. Actually, he's worth killing, and while the speaker's intent might be debatable, the article argues that this type of language it contributes to a climate where violence against Trump is no longer unthinkable. Really.
And that's where things get really scary.
Yeah.
Because it's one thing to disagree with someone's policies, right?
Right.
Even to think they're bad for the country or whatever. But to suggest that violence is an acceptable solution, that's crossing a very dangerous line.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And the article actually makes this distinction between like the types of threats that political figures face in different parts of the world.
Yeah.
In some countries, the danger often comes from, organized groups, right? Like political opponents with the resources and the motivation to actually carry out these targeted attacks.
But the article seems to be saying that in America, the threat is different.
Yeah. The article argues that in the U.S., the real danger lies in the potential for what they call lone wolf actors.
Lone wolf actors.
Yeah, so individuals who become radicalized by this constant barrage of fear-mongering and demonization, and who might feel compelled to take matters into their own hands.
So it's not necessarily about coordinated conspiracies or anything, but rather the risk of someone, becoming so convinced that their target is evil, so
Mm.
dangerous that they feel justified in taking these extreme measures.
Yeah, precisely.
Hmm.
They might even see themselves as heroes,
Yeah.
as patriots acting to save the country from this perceived threat.
It's a chilling thought, and it begs the question, where do we go from here? Like how do we navigate this increasingly toxic political landscape without resorting to these same tactics of demonization and fear-mongering ourselves? It feels like we're just being bombarded with these extreme narratives constantly. Like how do we even begin to sort through it all and form our own opinions when it feels like we're wading through a minefield of misinformation out there?
Yeah. Well, you've hit on a crucial point, really. It's not about shutting down dissenting voices or pretending these concerns don't exist. It's about engaging with them critically. We can't just passively absorb whatever information comes our way, especially in our current media landscape.
So no more just hitting share on something because it
Yeah.
because it confirms what we already believe.
Right, right. As tempting as that can be, we have to resist that urge.
Mm.
Critical thinking is more important now than ever, I think.
Okay, so how do we do that?
Well,
How do we be more critical?
ask yourself, like, who's saying this, and why are they saying this? What's their agenda, really? Are they presenting a balanced perspective here, or are they, cherry picking information to fit a narrative?
It's like being your own fact checker these days.
Yeah.
Not always easy, especially when it comes to complex political issues and everything. Any tips on cutting through the noise?
One helpful tactic is to actively seek out diverse perspectives, I think. Even or perhaps especially those you initially disagree with.
Yeah.
Don't let yourself get stuck in an echo chamber where everyone just sounds the same.
Right.
Expose yourself to different viewpoints, analyze the evidence that they present, and then form your own conclusions based on that.
Yeah, it's about engaging with the gray areas instead of getting trapped in black and white thinking all the time.
Precisely, yeah. And on that note, I want to emphasize something crucial that the article touches on. What if, instead of fixating on what divides us, all the time, we focused on shared values for once?
Mhm.
Common ground does exist, even amidst these passionate disagreements that we have.
So maybe the real takeaway here isn't about picking a side or winning the argument, but about shifting the entire tone of the conversation, really.
Yeah, I mean, imagine a world where we could disagree respectfully, even passionately.
Yeah.
But without resorting to demonizing our opponents or resorting to fear mongering and all that.
It's a powerful thought. And on that note, we'll leave you with this. Is it possible to disagree constructively, even on these deeply held beliefs, without resorting to the tactics of demonization and fear? And in so, how can we as individuals cultivate that kind of dialogue in our own lives? If you'd like to explore the source material that sparked this conversation, you'll find a link in the show notes. Until next time, stay curious.